Daily Telegraph interview, October 27, 1908, was an article published in the British newspaper, the Daily Telegraph. Although this article appeared to be the content of an interview with the Kaiser, it was not actually written by a Daily Telegraph reporter, but was penned by British Army officer Edward Stuart Wortley, who was commissioned by William II to compile his conversation with the Kaiser into this article. The Daily Telegraph sent the interview to William II for approval, who then forwarded the article to German Chancellor Bernhard von Bülow. However, Bülow gave the document a perfunctory review and passed it to the German Foreign Office for review, which in practice failed to perform its duty as well. This set the stage for the subsequent disaster. The publication of this interview was not an isolated event, but rather the product of a series of tense international relations and historical developments. In Europe at that time, opposing sentiments were rising. By 1907, Europe had split into two major opposing camps. Following the signing of the Entente Cordial in 1904 and Anglo-Russian Convention in 1907, centuries of various disputes between Britain and France, Britain and Russia, had been settled. These two agreements, along with the Franco-Russian alliance, brought these three countries together, forming the Triple Entente. Germany, Austria-Hungary, and Italy had earlier formed the Triple Alliance on May 20, 1882, through the signing of a military alliance treaty. Amidst this tension, several diplomatic crises further intensified the opposition between the two blocs. William II's visit to Tangier, Morocco on March 31, 1905, where he expressed support for Moroccan independence, aimed to challenge French influence in Morocco and test the strength of the Anglo-French partnership, which provoked strong discontent from France and Britain. The subsequent Algeciras Conference temporarily resolved the diplomatic crisis between Germany and France over Morocco, but among the 13 participating states, only Austria-Hungary supported Germany, highlighting Germany's diplomatic isolation and prompting it to pursue a more ambitious foreign policy. Almost simultaneously with the publication of this interview, Austria-Hungary, with German support, unilaterally announced the annexation of Bosnia and Herzegovina, formerly part of the Ottoman Empire. This angered Serbia, which saw it as a protector of Slavs, and its backer Russia, nearly sparking a war. The arms race between Germany and Britain is also an important historical context for this document. William II hoped Germany could build a naval force capable of competing with the British Royal Navy. State Secretary of the Imperial Naval Force Alfred von Tirpitz thus proposed Fleet Acts between 1898 and 1912. In response to the Imperial German Navy's attempts to challenge its naval control, the British Royal Navy undertook a massive expansion program from 1902 to 1910. Facing the increasingly tense situation and serious diplomatic difficulties, William II attempted to mislead the British about the true goals of German policy, and to stir up British suspicion against their Entente partners France and Russia, by pretending to be friendly towards Britain. This was William II's purpose in asking Edward Stuart Wortley to publish this interview article. In fact, long before this report, William II had pretended to show goodwill towards Britain many times. For example, he firmly rejected the somewhat reserved speech drafted in London Embassy for his visit in Windsor in 1907, and demanded emotionally charged language emphasizing his family ties to the royal family. However, the result was the opposite of what he intended. This interview article not only failed to reduce British suspicions, but deepened their distrust and dissatisfaction with Germany. Even worse, the article also caused anger among Germans, damaged Germany's national image, and dealt a serious blow to William II's authority. The publication of this interview article itself became a historical event, pushing Europe a step closer to war. This disastrous consequence came from the article's unreasonable content and the background of the time. In this article, William II spoke on British in a superior way, accusing and lecturing them, claiming they are mad as much as. Such a direct insult to a whole nation without doubt increased British dissatisfaction. He also treated Britain's suspicion as a personal insult. And strongly complained that to be forever misjudged, to have my repeated offers of friendship weighed and scrutinized with jealous, mistrustful eyes taxes my patience severely, in a threatening and final warning-like tone, making fun of Britain's suspicion as not coming from a reasonable assessment of threat, but from a jealous feeling towards Germany's fries. Not only that, but he also made an obvious and weak denial about German Navy's expansion, directly pointing out British fear about German Navy development, saying, "Surely that is a menace to England," but did not provide any convincing reason to argue against it, instead making British worries seem completely right. The German reaction to this article was even stronger. William II said, "If England is not in the minds of those Germans who are bent on creating a powerful fleet, why is Germany asked to consent to such new and heavy burdens of taxation?" Admitting with his own mouth that navy building was aimed at Britain. With one sentence, the Kaiser undermined his own entire government. For years they had argued the navy was for defense. Now he was claiming it was meant to rival Britain. Taxpayers were furious, and political opponents were outraged. Even worse, he ignored the strong anti-British sentiment among the German public, continuously calling himself a friend of England, saying Germany should always keep aloof from politics that could bring her into complications with a sea power like England. And even for this he not only refused the proposal from France and Russia during the Boer War to form a continental alliance. This alliance aimed to humiliate England to the dust, but also immediately told London about the disloyal plan. Such behavior was seen by many Germans as begging for favor from Britain, a serious offense to German national dignity. The content of this article also showed William II's ruling characteristic of making decisions alone and arbitrarily. He described the country's foreign policy decisions as his personal, arbitrary gifts, almost paying no attention to the role of the government and the administrative system. In the article's description of important foreign policy decisions, the subject was completely I. "I refused," I said. For example, would they ask me to receive them? I refused. Was that, I asked, the action of a secret enemy? The Kaiser's solo speech made the government seem incapable and unnecessary, seriously damaging the government's authority and the constitutional order. What followed was the strong political protest and constitutional crisis against Kaiser Wilhelm II's personal rule that broke out in the German Imperial Parliament on November 10 and 11, 1908. The Parliament's attack was aimed directly at Germany's ruling structure itself. The members of Parliament were against not just this one mistake in speech by William II, but his long-term pattern of ruling above the government. The Social Democrat Paul Singer sharply pointed out that the most important aspect of this crisis was not the question of how the Kaiser's remarks came to be published, but the fact that these remarks could be made at all. As a primary source, the Daily Telegraph interview offers a clear window into the political and diplomatic mishandling of William II's Germany. The interview reveals the Kaiser's reckless character and his damaging habit of personal diplomacy. Its publication was more than a diplomatic mistake. It sparked a domestic crisis by exposing the flaws of Kaiser's personal rule to the German public and parliament. It is, therefore, a key document for understanding the internal instability of the German Empire and the origins of the First World War.